positive ways to make change work rather than just saying, oh, it won't work. Just immediately, without even asking the right questions, without even wanting to know what this will mean, exploring it, we just shut it down. No. So we need to show willingness to learn new methods, new procedures, new techniques, and to avoid unnecessary resistance and conflict. And sometimes not just we don't want to do it, but what we do, we end up trying to drum up support for our position in order to allow the whole system to fail. And at the end of the day, everybody suffer for it. Just us and the customers who we are to be focusing on. Another thing that we expect professionals will seek to do is to be actively engaged in their workplace issues, participate, contribute to discussions, especially those aimed at improvement. Be willing to perform your task and your duties in keeping with your role, right? Be there, be intentional about the work that you do, pay attention, be diligent, be conscientious, take the appropriate level of care in performing our responsibilities and duties, complete our work efficiently and accurately. Do the checks that are required, right? Read over work that you have produced. Do the corrections, things that ought to be filed, ensure that it is filed. All of that one next step is important. Don't throw things down and assume that somebody else will come and pick it up and put it away. If it is your duty, do it and ensure that the person who comes behind you can find it and know what needs to be done, and in a continuous way. Productive, producing a reasonable amount of work output at the end of the workday is not something that we should shirk from, because the more you put it off, is the more the work is going to be there the next day and the next day and the next day. And at the same time, it is the more persons are waiting for service that they won't get. And we spend a lot of time probably doing things that are non-work related during working hours. And those are some of the things that we need to reduce so that we can, be a little more productive. All right. And, when you strive for being competent at your job, by mastering the knowledge and the skills and the abilities and so on, then you can become a lot more self-directed, because you can be productive without being closely supervised and monitored. The old public service performance appraisal form that they had way back in the day used to talk a lot, used to see people's thing written up about them being in need of close supervision and monitoring. In this day and age, with so much demand on people's time, professional conduct embodies people who can work without being closely supervised, that you are responsible and that you are reliable. That is the kind of workplace that people want. Time management, please make reasonable use of time when you're on the job. These days with social media, phone calls and so on, and just hanging around chatting. One of the worst things for me is to get into a workplace, whether it's the supermarket, a store, whatever, and employees are there just chatting right in front of me, things that I have no interest in hearing. And while they're doing it, they are not focused on me and getting me out of their place. They are so busy chatting and gossiping, talking sometimes their own personal business. Sometimes I have to call them out, because I am uncomfortable hearing what they're talking about. I don't want to know. And at the same time, I am being inconvenienced because I have to wait a lot longer. So, we have to be aware that we do these things, because we get so comfortable in the workplace. Sometimes we forget that it is a place of business and it is not our, informal setting when we go amongst ourselves. Managing the resource that we have, no matter how small, we will never get enough resource to do the job that we are asked to do. Never. It's not going to happen. right? Not anytime soon anyway. So it is important that we make efficient use of that which have been made available to us so that we can perform the job. And of course, when it comes to resource management, it is important that supervisors and managers ensure that there is fair distribution of work so that you don't overburden some people while some people are not doing enough, because without unfair distribution of work is poor resource management. You're not using up all the people that you have available to do the work. And again, the persons who are relying on us for the service that we provide are going to be the ones who ultimately be well, they are not going to be satisfied. They're going to be the dissatisfied one. All right. Teamwork. We should be able to work with others through cooperation and collaboration to get the job done, because there is almost no workplace that will require you to just work by your lonesome without having the input from some other co-workers and your input into their work, so that it's a two-way street. So again, we need to be able to work together in a really collegiate way, and we need to be able to provide helpful feedback so that we can uplift each member where they're falling down. We give the feedback in such a way that they can take it on board and improve their performance. And we give them feedback to kind of make them feel inspired to do even more. And workplace would really like people who are working for the organization to succeed, to achieve its goal. One of the work within this community called Jamaica, we have so many persons who are in various fields of work, and they basically are willing to trash their workplace. And, nobody is expecting blind loyalty, but you don't go out and disparage the people that you work with and disparage the organization that you work with in such a way that people would look and say, well, you have no respect for the work that you do. You have no respect for the people that you work with. And if you show that degree of disloyalty to what you do, obviously then your customer focus is going to be one of disrespect and disloyalty also. And obviously we expect some amount of caring and commitment to carry out the responsibilities and to have an understanding of and consideration of the needs of others. Too often we are very dismissive of the real issues that people are facing, real difficulties that are impacting them at the workplace. Some of them may have real difficulties that they need their colleagues' input to help them solve, to get to a place where, everything can work in a smoother way. But when we leave them and say, I don't care, it's their job, let them do it, and so on, it makes your life difficult too. So we need to show some care and some concern and consideration for those for which we work and for those with whom we work. So as you seek to improve your professional conduct, I would suggest that you ensure that you seek to consistently achieve high standards in whatever role you occupy, and do so whether you're being observed or not. I would also encourage you to be aware of the rules, the regulations, the policies, the code of conduct, the code of ethics, and so on, that governs your workplace, the things that you are required to do, and don't just dismiss them as being burdensome. They can assist in making the workplace a lot more harmonious for everybody to work. Seek to continuously improve the knowledge and competence that you bring. Try to be current and up to date on changes and on requirements. Get the information yourself. Seek after knowledge. Don't sit around and wait. Ask questions. Somebody will answer. Right? Be aware of what respectful and appropriate conduct is in any given situation, because we have different situations and we need to be conscious of that. And once you're conscious of that, then your professional conduct will be on its way to being very excellent. Learn from your mistakes and be open to objective feedback. And please respond to feedback, don't react to it. Because reacting, you're going to be using emotions, and more than likely, we're going to make a bad situation worse. Be an active listener. It is important that we learn to listen. Listen to our own selves, to what is coming out of our mouths, reflect on it, listen to what people around us are saying, and basically, again, learn to respond in an objective way. Be aware of your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. Because sometimes we are so caught up in our own situation that we are not recognizing how what we do and say impact those around us, how they feel. Means that you can read it from their body language, you can read it from how they respond to you, and maybe it was your emotions that leached out into what you said and did that caused that other person to respond or at least react the way they did. So it is very important that we practice some amount of self-reflection, that we need to be reflective of who and what we are and where we are and what we do and the importance of what we do. And help yourself along on this journey. Always strive to attend and participate in training provided by your organization. That covers the first part of the presentation. Any question, any comments? Hello?
Yes, so we're just checking in. Any questions or comments before we move on?
Yes.
Right, there's one question from my group. You spoke a little about self-reflection being an important part of our professional conduct. Can you elaborate a little on that as to how persons can, thrive to be self-reflective?
Yes, so it is important that we know who we are, self-awareness, right? Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, I just muted myself accidentally. Yeah, it is important that we have a degree of self-awareness, because when you know, for example, your own strengths and your own weaknesses, you know what your limitations are, you know some of the things that may trigger you, some of the things that may annoy you, and so on. You can know when you cross certain boundaries. You need to be aware of boundaries for yourself and boundaries for others. You need to be and when you have, there's nothing wrong that at the end of the day you ask yourself some questions about the interactions that you had, the highs and the lows. Were you kind to people today? Were you as helpful as you could be? What did you learn? These are some of the questions you need to ask. You can't just, at least I would encourage people not to just allow each day to bleed into the next without stopping and thinking about, what did I learn today? What did I do? What are the things that made me the person I am? Did I live up to to my self-image of who I am? Because these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And was I as empathetic as I could have been? Did I listen as well as I could have been? Did the answer that I give to the person uplift the person, or did it put that person down? So we need to look at ourselves, because part of our human growth, I believe, comes from us learning. We're never too old to learn. And self-awareness is part and parcel of what we should strive for, so that we can improve on ourselves. It's about learning and growing. It's a lifelong experience. And we cannot learn and grow unless we do some amount of self-reflection about who we are, what we stand for, what our values are, what our boundaries are, what are the things that we should be doing and the things that we ought not to be doing, what are the strengths that we are not using as much as we should, what are some of the limitations or weaknesses that we should be working to correct, and so on. So these are some of the things that we need to reflect on about who we are. And there's nothing wrong to in helping us in order to help on this self-reflection, that people who we can trust, we can ask them some questions about, you know, how they see us in terms of how we interact, and say, you know, what would you suggest I do around XYZ if you saw me doing so and so? Or you can go to them and say, you know, I've been thinking about this, help me with a perspective. All of that can come together to help us to reflect on who we are, because one of the most important things is to have a good awareness of the relationship we have with ourselves and the relationship we have with others. And at the end of the day, those are the issues that I think we should reflect on.
Thank you so much, Ms. Grant. And one person, Ms. Napier, would have mentioned that self-awareness is a part of emotional intelligence. And indeed,
yes, obviously. Yes.
All right. So
absolutely.
We will allow you now to move into your other presentation.
All right. Okay. All right. Are you seeing me?
Yes, we are.
All right, there you go. So this thing about conflict, you know, it's a you know, it's a word that is used for everything. Oops, I've gone too far, right? So the whole business about it is that what we need to recognize, it is usually unexpressed struggle between at least two parties. You know, people, I have interests, I have needs, I have wants, I have goals. And I perceive that what I want, my interest right now, is not compatible with your interests. And especially if where resources are concerned, and I'm going to be either negatively affected or I'm going to be opposed by the other person. So there can be a clash of ideas, there can be direct opposition or disagreement between people that can lead to a conflict. And the conflict can be internal, with you having to make a choice between, or decision between two or more choices. And usually when you talk to people, you know, in a workplace, for example, even in your own home, in your community, in whatever group you find yourself in, you're always going to find people there with different opinions, attitudes, beliefs, values, and perception. People have the way they think about things, their attitudes towards people, places, and things, how they behave based on those attitudes, the values that they have, the things that they live by, these principles that they hold dear, these beliefs that they have, and how they perceive the world and people and things around them. These are some of the things why we end up have conflict. So when we talk about conflict management, I mean, it came up in your presentation, in your request for this presentation. We just want to say that the conflict management and conflict resolution, we can either choose either one, either to manage or to have a resolution. So some people see them as the same, but they are slightly different processes. And it depends on what you do, you can shape them differently for it, right? Because resolution and management will often achieve different outcomes because of the different processes, right? Now, so let us talk about conflicts and disputes. Disputes typically are short-term disagreements that are relatively easy to solve if the persons involved are willing to work together. And solving the dispute often can be done by something that meets the needs of both sides, at least partially. So it can get out and it can be easily done, right? Conflict, on the other hand, can be a long-term problem. and it can be held deeply within each side. When we look at our communities in Jamaica, we know that some of them are conflict communities in some way, shape, and form, because there are long-standing problems between these two communities, and people continue to have these generational problems. It started from my grandfather, and it still continuing now with me, because it is a long-term problem. Oftentimes, people don't even know what causes these conflict. And one of the dilemma with it is it gives the impression, that the issues there are non-negotiable, and then you find like the people are always kind of resistant to change or any kind of resolution. I'm holding on, I'm not giving up, because we are right and over there you are wrong. And even within please note that even within the context of a conflict, you can have a dispute also arising, or several disputes arising, because disputes can arise because you are trying to manage the conflict and get to a point of resolution. And some people are saying, I don't agree with that approach, or I am not for that, or this not to be involved, or that person. And then it just balloons and create even more problem within a wider context of conflict. So some of these disputes can emerge, or they may remain silent. People might choose not to talk about it. And conflict can have, a time when it moves in and out of view, because the persons involved can have a lull and they go and gather themselves and come back for the next round of quarrel and dispute. And again, these are some of the things that we see happening around us, right? And so because we live in communities with different people, with different personalities, and in workplace, some of us are called upon, because people see us as professionals. You have a formal job, you go to a formal organization every day, you are seen, you are known. Sometimes people call you to ask you to help them settle these issues that they have, right? So it is important that it's not just the workplace, because you are in families and you are in groups, different groups, and all kind of places that people will call on you if they respect you and see you as professional. And there are some things that would be beyond our scope, and we need to know when it is beyond our scope. Because some of them, even the best and most skilled persons, sometimes can't help people to get a resolution because of how hardwired the parties are. They don't want to give up their position. And so what might happen is people have to find new ways of coexisting together. And this is where conflict management come in, because you're not getting any resolution. So the question is, how do we manage it in such a way that we can coexist, right? In our workplace, we are hopeful that we will have resolution rather than just managing it, so that we can have peaceful coexistence. So when you go for resolution, you are seeking to go to the heart of to the dispute that is at the heart of the conflict. And what you want to do is to find ways and means to find common ground between the parties, and so that they can work together and come out feeling that nobody has lost. Because it's a loss of faith sometimes why people don't want to give in, They don't want you to go out and brag and say, I best you, I won, and so on. Right? That is what people are sometimes afraid of. They don't want to give in, because if I give in, it means that I am weaker, and so on and so forth. Now, we know that conflict will happen everywhere, right? And what you want to do is in the workplace is not allow it to become so long-standing that it become a long-term issue, that you start to focus on the dispute that are happening now. And in fact, it ought to be in the homes and in communities and in the other groups, that as soon as a dispute arises, try to find a way to resolve it so that it does not become this lifelong problem, that people even forget what the original problem was about. It's the new disputes that keep arise along the lifetime of the conflict that people are worried about. So it is important that, one, we understand conflict and we find ways and means to resolve them and to stop them from coming up again. So again, for organization, we will talk about some of the ways that we might see it coming up in the job, right? So let us move on. Where we don't have to go so much into the whole business of management, conflict resolution and management. Now, conflict can either be good or bad, obviously, and we know that bad conflict is a part of life, whether we like it or not. And we also know that certain type of conflict can lead to positive change in an organization. But what it means is that we have to recognize that conflict can cause harm to an organization and to the people if it lasts. It can get shut down, right? So when we have good conflict or bad conflict, we have to understand that when we have differences of opinion around how something ought to be done, it has to be handled in such a way that the parties involved in disagreeing on how something should be done, it doesn't become personal and people leave feeling that they were Okay, I am back on. Are you hearing me? I was muted a while ago. So when you have conflict that you don't manage very well, it is destructive. And so it is important that we move to fix it as quickly as possible to resolve it. If a conflict is good, it may actually benefit those involved to practice conflict management and allow the conflict to shape relationship moving forward. Because obviously, as I said, oops, what's happening here? All right. Yeah, for a minute there, my thing was stuck in. So one of the things we need to recognize is that conflict can develop in many predictable ways. And there is the value in skillful action or intervention. When, it might look small or is nothing much, you have to know. And that is why self-awareness and awareness of the environment and the people around us and the emotions of the people around us is so very important to know, because we need to be able to, have an idea of what the temperature is looking like, so that we don't allow it to increase. Because when the temperature increase, then it's going to be harder to reduce. So when you feel that something is not quite right and you are not sure why, don't go away and build a story about why you think it is not right. Try to ask your question about what is happening in such a way that you get answers in a productive way, rather than it becomes hostile. Sometimes is how we go about asking the questions that cause the other person to feel bad. Your tone of voice, your body language, and all of that can communicate something other than what you really want if you don't check yourself, if you are not aware. So check on how the other person feel. Are they worried about something? And don't ask it in front of everybody. We are famous to say, then what happened to you? Why you are going so far? That is not going to help if the person is really feeling rotten or upset about something. Try some small talk, relax, and get more general information and then move on. Because you haven't reached the big issue yet. Perhaps it's not really about you, and perhaps you should stay out of it, right? Because it can be something major, it can be something minor. If something happened that leaves you feeling irritated or upset, well, sometimes you can again be self-reflective. Is this something that is worth creating a problem over? Is this the right time to address it? Should I go away, think about it, and come back and find a nice and relaxed way to talk about it so that we can bring closure to the thing? Eh? Because what you want is you should want relationship to go well and to continue to go well. And so you can express respect and goodwill and put it to rest. And we know that as human beings, we misunderstand each other when we make false assumptions. Because this is part of some of the problems that we have. Perception again, who we perceive people to be, what we assume they are going through. I remember when I was in my former life, I used to have a supervisor who was insistent in telling me what people were like. This is how they are. It took me a good while for him to stop saying it to me, because he liked to tell me that this is how people are, this is who they are, this is what they are thinking. You're not a mind reader. You don't know. You make assumptions that you know what they are thinking. And you are doubling down and insisting that you are right. Those are dangerous things to do. Right? So we think we know people's motives. We think we know why they behave that the way they are. And we are so busy insisting we are right and pushing our narratives. We're not actually hearing what the people are saying. So perhaps it is a sensitive issue, and it was raised, and communication has not fixed the problem yet, because we are doubling down on where we are. And we are not giving the person a chance to explain where they are coming from. And sometimes we think about the problem and we exaggerate it. We make it worse than it is, because we throw things in that does not belong. It has nothing to do with it. Some of us like to add to things, you know. We add value to it, but it is not the right value, because we rake up things in the past and we throw it into the current situation. We have to learn to stick to what is the issue, right? And that is something that we have to learn to do. And we have to learn to be patient. Because if you go to people and they feel that you're rushing them and you want to hurry up, you know, I will have other things to do, then it is not going to help. If the timing is not right, explain to the person that, you know what, this is going to take more time than I thought. So let us set this aside for discussion at another time, because we don't have enough time now, and I don't want you to feel rushed. I want you to have your say, and I want to be able to hear everything that needs to be here. Don't assume you understand. Check your assumptions, check your conclusion, and why you are making it, right? And sometimes, again, when we have failed communication in the workplace, it creates tension. As a matter of fact, at home, failed communication creates tension. Emotions are high, and we are weighted down with negative attitudes, and we have fixed emotions about the communication and the person. And we don't want to talk. We clam up. And that is why we sometimes don't get to where we want to go, because people now are walking on eggshell because the tension is too much and people are finding their corner. You know, when boxers are in a ring, take the corner, and everybody over in their corner, and the thing is simmering, and the atmosphere is so uncomfortable. And everybody wants it to be fixed, but nobody knows how to fix it. So one of the things that we need to do is to deal with our own bad feelings, our own negative feelings, right? And figure it out. And we need to work patiently on our relationship too, so that we can get to the bigger issue in a way that is respectful and, you know, and will lead us to the outcome that we want. We need to be able to work together over time with everyone involved. Or you may need a neutral person to help us. So remember now that, again, when emotions are at a boiling point, is not a good time. When you're angry, it's not a good time to want to fix an issue or to get to the bottom of it. When you're frustrated or upset, when you're in a negative mood, that's not a good time. And some of these, look here, workplace violence happen. Workplace violence happen. We don't hear a lot of it in the way that we probably hear in some other places. But people get physical with people in the workplace.
The money anytime soon when you say it.
Miss Bay. Miss Carr, you see why we have a difficulty with when those Zoom meetings, you don't. All right, I think I am unmuted now, right? Okay, so we need to have cool heads and to find ways of communicating information so that it's clear, it's simple, and when we can help each other to get out of the problems that we're having. So then when you look at in your workplace, ask yourself, to what degree, if you're having unsuccessful communication problems, how much of it is causing conflict and dispute and bad feeling and actually just undermining the harmony in the workplace. Look at the personalities that you have, and that is why, again, it is important for know thyself is a very important thing, and trying to know the people around you, pay attention to people and what they stand for. And we can have unclear roles and responsibility in the workplace, and these can cause our problems. The way we use data, for example, the way we use information can be another problems. And the way the work is structured and where we are in relation to other persons, you know, who we sit beside, how far we have to go to get things done. All of those things sometimes can be a part of the challenges that we face. Unequal power and authority. Somebody believes that this person have power and I don't have any. You know, and the values that people bring to the workplace and the relationship that people cultivate. So communication is not always as easy as opening our mouths and speaking. You know, very easy to for anything to come out of your mouth. And some people say, oh, you have no filter and so on. But, you know, they say that 10% of conflicts are due to difference in opinion. I don't know how true that is, but it could be right. And 90% are due to the wrong tone of voice. Because if you think about just the relationship you have with the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, I suspect that you'll find many of us are easily offended based on how people's tone of voice sound to us when they communicate some things to us. And that can really get our backs up when you feel people are talking down to you or belittling you or berating you or disrespecting you. We know that those things are problems. So in all fairness, almost every interpersonal conflict can be blamed at least partially on poor communication. And it's not because people are poor communicators, it's because each person has their own preferred way of communicating. And we are failing to take that into consideration. And basically, when it leads to unmet expectations in people, we can have awkward situations. So you can imagine people want information from you and you're not giving to them and they need it for certain things. And then, you know, people are condescending or insulting and so on. People are, you know, will get into problems. So please avoid conflicts because they are poor communication styles. Look at how the kind of ways that you use to communicate. Sometimes people will sell email and assume somebody get it. You know, when you could have at least just take up the phone and make a call, because people might not check their emails regularly. Sometimes emails find itself in junk. People might not check their junk box every day, because who does that? So does one size fit all? I remember when I was in my previous dispensation, there are a lot of things being pushed via email and so on. But the bulk of the staff didn't have access to emails, largely because of internet issues, especially while they're on the job. And when they spend their own money to buy data, they're not willing to use that data for work-related purposes. It's something that I used to talk about a lot, that the assumption that when you're at a certain level, you can assume that everybody is getting the information, but you may very well be wrong because of access to things that you take for granted. Another problem that we are very good at in Jamaica, creating a problem, is being very passive-aggressive in our communication. And why passive-aggressive is not a very good communication style is because the real issue that is behind the discomfort is not being addressed. You know, in Jamaica, how we like to kind of, we use the term through a word. We're not saying, coming up front and saying that the chair is uncomfortable. We allude to how nobody care for me and nobody no business about my welfare. How anybody is going to know that the chair you're sitting in needs to change because it is uncomfortable, it is broken, if you are not willing to say that the chair is uncomfortable. So, you know, so we love to make those kinds of statements and people don't understand. So it's because we are angry about it and we want to basically get that anger out rather than solve the problem, because we want people to know we are upset. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change anything. And if we continue in this passive-aggressive communication, sometimes because we feel powerless, because we feel stuck, because we feel resentful, and sometimes it is because we fail to deal directly with the thing that is causing us resentment. And so we try to express this in a way that undermines the perceived or real objective of the resentment, the person who we think causing it, right? So that is why you'll hear them mutter to themselves rather than confront a person or an issue. And then people say, why are you angry? No, I'm not angry. Who said me angry? Of course you're angry. You're not thinking about it. It's there. And we use facial expression that don't match how we feel, you know, or we use words that don't really match how we are feeling. Body language, sarcasm is a good way that sometimes people use to hide, you know, what they are really feeling. And we deny that there's a problem. We look like we're going to cooperate, but we are purposely doing things to annoy and disrupt. Yes, boss. Of course, boss. I'm going to do it, boss. And then when people want somebody who knows you very well might say, I know you don't mean that. You're not going to do anything. So we have to be careful about how passive-aggressive we are, because it can create another form of conflict. Then, you know, people used to talk about this, but a lot. I don't know to the degree to which they still talk about whether people are type A or type B, but it's still of worth and value to think about. That again, because people have different personality types. People now are more talking about narcissistic personalities and so on. I'm not getting into that. That's a whole new big and different type of presentation. But let us think about people who are competitive, for example, and who will strive towards their goal without them working hard, and they're working also caught up in their own in accomplishment and effort that they don't even have time to enjoy. They have poor work-life balance and expect everybody else to be doing the same thing like them. look here, they are easily wound up. They are like a spring. And therefore, anything that touch them can set them off. They can overreact. They say people who are like that tend to get high blood pressure. They are very impatient and it's always, urgent. Everything have to be done now. And delays drive them crazy, right? And sometimes these people end up have too many things scheduled in a tight timeline and can't manage it, and then becomes really angry and frustrated and so on, and trying to juggle too many balls at the same time. And then the hostility tend to get hostile very easily, become very angry very easily, and so on. And of course, where aggression is possible, don't discount it. And they also might resort to bullying, right? And they are very critical and judgmental, tend to see the worst in people, and display anger and envy and lack of empathy. And well, I have to do all of this work when I'm not, look at my Lord, look at my workload. Yeah. What you have doing, you're not doing half of what me doing and you're complaining. Those kind of things can come out, and again, hostile, passive aggressive, you name it, all of that. Whereas you have some people who we are working with, they tend to be patient, relaxed, easygoing, work steadily, enjoy what they do, enjoy being people. They are less stressed. They tend to be more tolerant. They will reflect, and they will have lower level of anxiety and so on and so forth. And then you have the people pleasers, very passive, very patient. They have a hard time expressing their wants, their needs, their feelings, their expectation. They assume that everybody around them should know. And people and again, because we're living in such a fast-paced world, people expect that as an adult you should speak up. And one of the dangers of having people who are people pleasers is that they will try to do so much for everybody, stretch themselves too much, and again can't get things done, and it can create all kinds of problems because they have a difficulty expressing what they are feeling and what they want. And so they're always very nice, but they avoid conflict and they want to be liked by everybody. And they are always willing and patient. And one of the dangers with people like these, they never say no, and they end up causing sometimes chaos because they can't say no because they have to please. And you find them falling behind in the work. And although they're trying to be nice, the behavior is not conducive to efficiency and effectiveness, and can create all kinds of problems in the workplace. So again, we have to be aware of who we are and who are the persons around us. And it is up to us to help people pleasers manage how they behave in the workplace. Well, yes, they are adults and they are responsible for their own behavior. But just because they are willing don't mean that we should always be asking them to do things. In the workplace, unclear roles and responsibility can create problems. There's a story told about a ship captain and his chief engineer arguing about which one of them was more important to the ship. They failed to agree, and they resorted to what they felt was a unique plan of swapping places. So the chief engineer went to the bridge and the captain went to the engine room. And then after a couple of hours, the captain suddenly came up from the engine room to the deck covered with oil and soot. And he was waving a monkey wrench at the engineer and saying, "You'll have to come down here. I can't make her go. Can't make the ship go." And the chief engineer said, "Of course you can't. We are aground. So we're doing the wrong job, and we think we're doing a good job of it, but we're not doing a very good job of it because we are out of our scope." And one of the things that we tend to do in organization is that we know other person's jobs At least we seem to know other person's job and what they should be doing and how they should be doing their job, and we're not paying attention to ours. We are too busy, criticizing, micromanaging, giving advice and so on to another person and their job, and we are neglecting ours, or we want to do their job and we end up run the ship aground. And so we need to be clear in our task, in our duties, in our responsibility. Who is to do what? What is the thing that I am to do as part of my day-to-day duties? Because sometimes in organization, things tend to find itself on people's desk it's not theirs to do. And the people who are supposed to do it are not doing it. In your workplace, you need to pay attention to these things, because these things create conflict, create disputes, and it can stay there and simmer and simmer and simmer, right? And so while we should have some flexibility and willingness to work outside of our core duties and responsibility as a good thing, if we have too much ambiguity, you can have low productivity, people being overworked, burnout, and people leaving, right? Because it's too much. Because when you have resentment and low accountability, where people are expected to do work not on their job description, then obviously your workplace is not going to be good. So when you look at how, again, even the way you set up the work, your workflow, and who is involved in making a decision. Sometimes one of the worst things that can happen to a set of workers is for changes to be made about the things that they are supposed to do, and they were not informed. They are told last minute. Sometimes they hear about it by the way. Who made that decision? These are things that we have to pay attention to, and where people are in relation to each other. Again, some spaces carry certain unique challenges. I remember getting a call, we got a complaint about a certain police district and what was happening there, and the police not response. And I said, look here, we are sitting in Kingston. I'm going to go out into the west there and look for myself. And another senior person said, I'm coming with you. I think that's a good idea. And when we got there, we saw, we could understand why the citizens were complaining, obviously. But then when we look at the geographic layout of the space, even at some point in the community driving through, there was no form of housing, electricity, anything, and the road was terrible. When we look at what public transport was like, so even sometimes where people are having problems and it is causing dispute and conflict, sometimes we need to just get up and go and look and speak to stakeholders and so on. And again, where that is concerned, sometimes those of us who are getting the complaint about the conflicting and disputing situation, we have more power than the persons who are being complained about, and we need to remember that too, that we don't just issue an edict like we are some king and princesses of old. Right? We have to find out what is happening and what are the day-to-day values that people are dealing with, because sometimes people day-to-day value, my day-to-day value is just to survive. How I'm getting to and from work safely. Those are things that are important to me on a daily basis. What is happening in my community, because it's all about the need to survive. And sometimes, because we don't appreciate these day-to-day challenges and things that people have to make very important to them, we can be insensitive and we can make comments that create problems. And how people define themselves right now, that is a big thing in this world, because pronouns have changed, and you might tell yourself it's not happening here. We run domestic and sexual and gender-based workshops, and the other day I was getting a feedback from some of the people that I trained and left, And they found themselves in a situation where people are saying, I don't identify with that group, even though I look this way. This is where I want to be. What are you going to do? Right? You can't end up create conflict. Relationship issues, big thing. Misperception, how we see things and people, how we stereotype and label people. And of course, again, poor communication. These are in relationship. Because if you are the supervisor and you talk down to people, then there's a problem. If you are the service provider and the customer come to you for help and you talk down to them, conflict is going to arise or dispute is going to arise. And over time, it is going to build up and you get a reputation for being less than the type of person that people want to interact with. And how you see people based on their address, how they dress, where they are from, and so on. All of this can lead to problems. How we treat people because of how we stereotype them. And how we perceive a situation, because we make assumption, we need to ask questions. So, you know, those are some of the things that we need to consider. There are some very obvious signs that you can recognize to help you to understand that there's a conflict. We don't want you to ignore it. What we want you to do is to be attentive, to be aware of your surroundings and the people around you and the things that are happening. And if you look and listen, you can observe where some things are going and deal with it, resolve it before it becomes a crisis. And when it becomes a crisis, you're going to have to manage it, and then hopefully you can get it resolved. Right? So, you know, and what you don't want to live with is unresolved conflict, because it doesn't take anything for it to flare up again. So we need you to stay alert and to look for it. You watch and see how people are interacting around you in the workplace. You look at their body language and their tone of voice and how they communicate, how they treat each other. You look and figure out, are there frequent disagreements? Why is there always disagreements happening here? Sometimes the disagreements are indicators of a deeper issue, and you need to find out. People withhold information, not sharing it because I'm not talking to those persons. I don't want to have anything to do with them because the thing getting personal, and even though the information don't belong to them, they're withholding it. Information that could make the work easier and for everybody else's life to be easier, people are withholding it, not sharing. And they give you all kind of excuses. Sometimes we spring things on people and we never prepare them for it. Nasty surprises. Not every surprise is a pleasant one. Don't take people by surprise when you don't have to. Don't do it, because you're trying to catch them out. You're trying to set them up to fail. Those are things that shouldn't happen, and people will know. Right? Strong public statements nowadays, because of social media, people are taking up their phones and recording things and putting it on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, all over the place. And also people are filming you. You don't know who is going to film you, under what condition. Those things can get out and create a bigger conflict than you would ever dream could happen out of what you thought was something small. And then you have a whole community and sometimes a whole country to appease and to try and make something right. Right? Hearing disagreements through social media, that again, we have to be careful. Yeah? And there are conflicts in the value system, because you're saying one thing and you're doing something. You're showing favoritism when you shouldn't. Some people are allowed to get away with coming to work when they want, at whatever time they want, they can leave. And some people have to toe the line. Some people can get all the time off they want. Some people can just do just about everything. And yet we are saying that we believe in discipline. But some people are disciplined and some people are not. Those are some of the things that create problems. And then, so again, when you look in your community and your group, look, you pay attention and figure out about how the desire for power in the group is going. Look and see what is happening with, where people, there's always threat of retaliation if people do the right thing, for example, or don't do what they are supposed to do. Yeah. And the open disagreement. We are not talking openly and honestly with any kind of candor about issues that are work related and so on. We retreat to our corners and we are staying there and we're not compromising. We're not willing to meet in the middle and to find something that is workable where we can move on. Right? We can withdraw our support on important issues. Workplace with a lot of rumors, increasing lack of respect, especially at supervisory and management staff that tell you that you have a problem, right? And then, so when you also have no clear goals and there's no discussion about the progress or failure relative to goals that you set, or there's unfair evaluation of performance and people's contribution, many times when it comes to performance evaluation and so on, or contribution, people are very upset about it. They don't ask the questions, and even with explanation, that can create problems. And so we have to be careful about some of these things, right? These are some of the things that create problems. So when you're going to look at your issues, at your conflict situation, or what is happening in the organization, try and figure out what the issue is. What is the kind of relationship that exists, and what are the emotions running through the situation there? Because how important is the relationship to people? Because if you have some people when they are in a conflict, it's either the goal is more important than the relationship, and they will sabotage relationship, or at least don't care about whether there's a one to keep afterward, so long as they achieve the goal that they want. So remember those things. It's very important that we recognize the relationship and the goal when we're thinking about these things. So we don't want to, so let us move further. So remember, treat people as people. And because anytime you're going to deal with conflict, remember, people are important, because at the end of the day, the goal is of getting some kind of resolution, managing the process is important. But remember, again, ensure that we take into consideration the relationship when we are dealing with it. And remember that everybody comes to a discussion with their own experiences, and they perceive the world a little differently. And remember that that will impact on how they see what the issues are, what the persons are, and what the relationship are. And their experience, again, will impact that too. Believing, and most times people will come with, oh, I am right, and I am right attitude, and especially if they are always able to get their way in things. And we need, therefore, people to come to discussion around issues and relationships and goal with an open mind, acknowledge our bias, and agree that we are going to be as open-minded as possible, and try to find a neutral space to discuss the issue. Don't go where somebody alone have all the support. One party have all the support. Sometimes you might need to move where you're having the discussion, where everybody feel that it is a new environment. This is not the place where we are to do it, and so on. Because, and sometimes neutral ground, you might have to ask somebody from another department to come in but you have to make sure that they don't know what is going on. And you know, one of the things is in workplace and in anything, it's easy to talk about us versus them or me versus you, you know. And so what we need to find out, what is our common goal here, right? When we want to deal with this dispute, what is it that we want to achieve so that we can find a way out of this situation that we're in. So the common goal could be we need to find a solution, right? Because what we can then see is that, yeah, we can see that we have something in common. Rather, it's them versus us or me versus you. And please don't make anybody feel ignored in the process. Like, oh, I'm not going to be seen and heard, right? And my needs are not being met. You don't want people to come out of a discussion worse than they go in with. So it is important that within the open mind, we need to start to figure out how can we collaborate. But again, the underlying issues. What are the underlying issues? You have to find that out. And you have to know when you might need to negotiate, or you have to mediate, or you have to have somebody arbitrate where the parties decide that, okay, we all, whatever this person says, we're going to abide by it, right? So again, that is a whole 3-step process that takes a lot of work, obviously. Hopefully your workplace don't have that kind of situation. I suppose that happens when we have industrial action at the workplace more than anything else, where we have to go through all of that, where we go through the negotiation and the mediation and so on, and it doesn't work and we need arbitration. Don't know if we're doing that anymore in Jamaica. Don't know what is happening. I think people are just moving out and leaving. But just to finish up quickly, just to tell you about the 5 basic styles of handling conflict. And hopefully you can identify which of the styles you favor. What you might, everybody use all of them, but you might have one that you are more partial to. So we look at that. Now, words are very important, and the words that we use, remember, they have power. Now, one of the major style of dealing with conflict for some people is to avoid, like the turtle. You know that the turtle pull himself in when there is trouble, hide in his shell, and that shell is very hard, can't get at him, no matter how big and bad the predator is. But this happens when one or both of the persons decide to sidestep the issue. And sometimes avoiding conflict is useful, and it can work when it is not going to impede the work or it is not related to a work issue. So just leave it alone and you can sidestep it. It is non-confrontational. It ignores, it denies that issues are a problem. So it is not always good. I don't think it should be a permanent solution where we just avoid, because if we avoid, it is going to brew and brew and brew, and the temperature is going to grow up until grow until one day we have a problem. Then we have the persons who likes to accommodate, who we call the teddy bear, right? When it comes to the dispute, they will try. These kind of person will try to accommodate the demand of the other person at the expense of their own. And so the teddy bear will smooth things over. They are agreeable, non-assertive, and for them, the relationship is very important, right? So they will try to maintain the relationship at the expense of resolving the conflict. So they don't want to touch it any at all. Compromising, they said this is like the fox, always trying to find a mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfy each side. It's not gonna be a total satisfaction, but at least we can walk away feeling that, yeah, each of us got something out of this. We got some of our wants satisfied. So we are collaborating fails. Compromising is the next best solution. So this is a win some, lose some kind of approach. It can be aggressive but cooperative, and with this approach is going to be moderately concerned with the goal and with the relationship. None is higher than the other. They want to come out meeting the goal but still having some kind of relationship going forward. When you deal with the shark, well, the shark is going to go hard all out and satisfy their desired outcome at the expense of the other party. Competing is the name of the game. And in many workplaces, sometimes that level of competition that some people come with, that hard driving competition, it can be problematic because workplace is interdependent, where we depend on each other to get things done. And sometimes people can come in with that kind of a mindset that doesn't work, where it is a win at all costs, survival of the fittest. The goal is all important. The relationship is not very important. I don't care how well you and I get on. So I'm going to drive straight for getting what I want done. There is no balance. Don't come talk to me. So we have to be careful about where people start competing and how we set people up to compete, because sometimes managers and supervisors does that without even realizing that you're setting up people to be competitive in a workplace that doesn't need it. Or where there's an argument, I have to win at all costs. A discussion, my point of view must take center stage and take precedence. Those are the kind of behaviors you have to look for in workplace, where the shark is dominating and nobody else can get a word in. And what the rest of the team will say is that, well, let them stay there with it. I am not participating. I ain't doing nothing. You don't get to a solution. Conflict and dispute arise. You don't get the participation and the engagement that you want. The owl has always been represented as wise. I suppose out of that old Greek myth that the goddess of wisdom used to walk around with an owl. So I suppose that is why the owl is associated with wisdom. But collaborating involves us each side working together to find a solution to try and satisfy everyone. And in most cases, collaborating is the preferred way. Owls are the problem solver. They are assertive, they are collaborative, and they want to ensure that we solve the problem and we live with the relationship of the parties, healthy. So you need to start to ask yourself in your workplace, which is your style of managing or dealing with conflict where that happens around you as a supervisor, as a manager, or as a professional that people may call on. But what style are you going to go in with? Which is your are you going to figure out where you and how you need to use them? So it is important that in trying to practice conflict management and conflict resolution, that we deal with it in an efficient way, that we build credibility and trust amongst the parties, and that we recognize that conflict is a part of everyday life, but it takes practice to master effective conflict management and resolution. And we need to recognize that destructive conflict is bad for everybody. It's bad for workplace. It reduces productivity, morale, and harmony, and everything. Loss of income, loss of a lot of things. And in some cases, some of these issues can find themselves going in the community and creating problems, creating polarization in the workplace, in the community, and so on and so forth. So we have to figure out that in the workplace, that it is a social system, and it is a social system which is based on a network of formal and informal relationship. And the relationship of the people in a workplace will determine the level of harmony or disharmony that exists. And it is important that organizations find ways and means to set up mechanism for conflict resolution, so that, you know, as part of your conflict management process, where people know where they can take grievances, who they can go to when there is a dispute. It should that they don't feel that they are left on their own and have to struggle with it and stay there and fester and nothing gets done. So it is important that workplace have some kind of system where people know who I go to. And these are people who should get some form of training, obviously, in dealing with conflict. Individual workers should consider their roles by practicing, again, self-reflection and self-awareness. Know your style of communication with people, whether you're a passive-aggressive communicator, whether you're, you know, some of the things that create dispute and discomfort and so on, that lead to all of the challenges that we have when we can't work together and get along. So some of the things that we want you to do and to think about carefully as supervisors and managers, so that you can handle your interpersonal conflict. You know, manage your stress as best as you can. You know, the stress management, if you are in the health sector, you should have a good handle on some of the techniques and so on that you should use to manage stress. Learn to be a good listener, an active listener. Listen carefully to the people around you. And most importantly, listen to yourself and how you communicate with and deal with other people, because you will hear. Don't just talk without hearing yourself. Be aware of and respect the differences, the difference in personalities, in every kind of way that you can think of, how people self-identify these days, all those things. Be aware of it and respect it, so long as it is not going to create any problem that you feel uncomfortable with. If this difference is going to cause you a problem, then obviously something is wrong. The person is not behaving correctly. And if the person is not behaving correctly, your code of conduct should tell you how to handle it. So use up the mechanisms there to ensure that things are dealt with. Be aware of your own emotions. Again, don't dump on people. Know the kind of things that can trigger you and seek to resolve them within yourself. Get help if you need it, because some of us have anger issues. Some of us feel deflated very easily. Some of us, have all kind of negative emotions that may be a hindrance and can lead to misunderstanding and conflict. Get help in dealing with that. Be self-reflective, as I say again. Figure out your role in the scheme of things and the things that you may or may not be doing that can add to the dispute and the conflicts that can arise in your organization. And I think I will stop there to take any questions and comments that you may have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to Ms. Grant. At this time, we will, no, maybe Ms. Grant wants to grab a mouthful of water. All right.
I'm good.
I'm good. All right. At this time, we will take any questions from the audience. We know the presentation was clear, concise, precise, a lot of food for thought. So are there any questions? Any questions?
Well, it seems as if they figure that this part of it is straightforward.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, indeed, you did very well. Very well, and it was clear and straightforward. Very well.
Okay, okay, Sister Malahu, are you from Westmoreland? Are you from Westmoreland?
I'm in Montego Bay. I'm in Montego Bay.
No, I know, but I'm asking if you're originally from the West.
My husband
I
is
knew-
from the original. My husband.
Oh,
from the
okay,
West.
okay.
Yes, he's from the West.
All right. Well, you all are in the West, but I mean Westmoreland.
Yes,
Yeah,
he,
'cause
he's from
I know
Westmoreland.
some people with that name from that
Yes,
end.
man. Same way.
Peter
Family
Sween.
members. Family members indeed.
All right, indeed.
All right.
They did very well this Lovelet.
All right, so we're getting a lot of very good presentation coming through the chat. If there is any burning question, we will take it. I would have recognized as well that persons are asking for the presentation. So I'm going to ask Ms. Grant if she'll be willing to share, but the presentation has also been recorded and will be available for sharing.
Yeah, you can do it. I think maybe that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Right.
Because
So-
one of the things about PowerPoint presentations, you see, they are put together for a presenter, and sometimes when you give it to people, it really doesn't have the same meaning to
Yes.
them reading it, because it is not really takes its point. So, so I normally don't give people PowerPoint presentation. If people want handouts, that make some effort to create handout that I believe is helpful. I didn't do that because that was not part of the deal. So I normally don't, it takes some work to go back and go through and edit and so on. I normally don't give people PowerPoint. Normally they don't do a thing with it.
So the presentation will be available via recording. We will also be having this presentation again on the 28th at 2 o'clock for those persons who would have missed it. So, hi. So we are going to be having this presentation again on the 28th. It was also streamed live on YouTube, so persons can go back and watch it on the Western Region YouTube link. So we will have it both in terms of recorded copy and also in terms of the YouTube link. All right, so the presentation will be available, and when it is ready, we will send it. But if you can't wait for the recording, it is also available on YouTube, so we can watch it there. So this afternoon, I just want to thank all the participants for being here. We are recording over 80 persons on the Zoom link and another 50 something on the YouTube link. I want to really thank all our participants who were with us this evening. So we would have recognized that our presenter, Ms. Grant, would have done a phenomenal job. We just want to thank her for her presentation. She spoke about teamwork, being loyal, caring, committed, and diligent as being important to our professional conduct. And one of the things that she also said was that as a practice of our professional conduct, we should do what is right, whether we are being observed or not, and be aware of what respectful and appropriate conduct is for any situation, right? Practice self-reflection, watch our body language, pay attention to our highs and our lows, because they do impact the kind of relationships that we have. In terms of conflict, she gave a very, very good definition for conflict. And she said, it is an expressed struggle between two or more parties. And a lot of times that is what is happening in a conflict. She spoke about us recognizing that there are differences in opinions, in attitudes, in values, in perception, and that a lot of time this leads to conflict, some that we can perceive, some that we cannot perceive. And then she said 10% of our conflicts are due to a conflict of opinion, but 90% are due to the wrong tone at a particular time. So she then went on to speak about, the passive aggressive person. And sometimes, we absorb certain things because we just want to make it right. And then she would have provided the tips to avoid conflict. So she spoke about avoidance. She spoke about us being a teddy bear. She spoke about the compromising fox. She spoke about the competing shark. She also spoke about the collaborative owl. So as we go from this presentation this afternoon, I ask that we take all of these important pointers with us, ensure that at the end of the day, remember that while we have our individual personalities, the overall objective is for the success and growth of our organization. Let us work together to improve our professional conduct and also to improve our conflict resolution skills. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. A big shout out to all the parishes. And I want to also officially thank Ms. Grant for her wonderful presentation this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Those persons who missed a part of it, please rejoin us on the 28th at 2 o'clock to go through this presentation, and invite those persons who were not here today to come on in and share with us. Until then, I just want to say, walk good, take care, and see you soon.
Thank you all, everybody. Bye, Miss
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.